court is now in recess as star witness Michael Cohen testifies in former President Trump's criminal hush money trial. Trump's former lawyer and fixers providing testimony that could ultimately determine the outcome of the trial. ABC News executive editorial producer John Santucci, senior reporter Catherine Faulders, and legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer join me now for more on this. John, what's the latest from court?
We're on a break. It's been a really tense morning so far, so I think that break is needed for everybody in the room. I think what's been interesting from just our team's observations is how quickly we moved past the niceties, if you will, right into the meat and potatoes of this case. We've gotten the doorman story, we've gotten the Karen McDougal story, we've gotten the audio recording of Donald Trump and Michael Cohen talking about how Karen McDougal was going to be paid off by AMI, David Pecker, and the National Enquirer. I think it's remarkable how fast things are moving in this courtroom, because at the end of the day, we know that there is going to be a lot of time and energy needed to be spent on the Stormy Daniels story, because that's the story. That is the one of this entire case. These 34 criminal counts are built around Diane. So it's interesting in that respect. The other observations just from our team collectively, if I can quickly hit them. One, the eye contact and lack thereof. Michael Cohen looking straight ahead at prosecutors, Donald Trump eyes closed, sometimes swaying his head a little bit, but looking straight ahead as well. Very little from either man in that courtroom, and two men, let's be clear, that spoke to each other multiple times a day, as Michael Cohen testified. The jury, interestingly, stone cold throughout all of this. They're watching everything, taking notes, kind of like you're doing right now, paying attention to everything that is happening in that courtroom, because I think there's a lot that prosecutors are very quickly trying to tick through with Michael Cohen as we build up to the Stormy Daniels payment.
Brian, what sticks out to you from this testimony so far?
Interesting, not that much. It's exactly as we expected it to kind of play out so far, kind of marching out step by step. And I'm actually waiting for something to stick out. I'm waiting for that kind of smoking gun, and I think we might expect it going forward. But right now, it's, if you told me this was what's going to happen 3 hours ago, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What I do want to do is I want to give a little context in terms of how the courtroom operates, because maybe not everyone's been in a New York City courtroom. When you walk into the courtroom, on the right side is always where the defense table is, and on the left side is where the prosecution. And if you're looking at the judge has the witness typically on their right side. So when John talks about both men being able to just stare straight forward, they can actually sit in that courtroom, which would be very tight at times, and not actually look at each other. So again, Donald Trump being on the right side is looking forward, and Michael Cohen looking directly at the prosecutor's table with the jury to his right.
But John, that's a sharp contrast to when Cohen testified in the civil trial against Trump.
Well, but I also think that Donald Trump was a sharp contrast to Donald Trump in these proceedings, right? Because the civil case, he could go when he wanted, right? It's almost like he made an appointment. At one point when Michael Cohen was supposed to take the stand in that case, he actually ended up not getting called by the Attorney General that day. So in hindsight, which is actually interesting here in these proceedings, Diane, this is really the real face-off that you can't avoid. And I think that for Donald Trump, this is the case where it's so personal, right? Because look what's happened, right? We talk about the civil case. The civil case was bigger than Michael Cohen, right? The Attorney General had been working on it for years. There was a lot more documents and records and material that went into that case beyond one incident. This is all about one incident that only three men knew about: Donald Trump, David Pecker, Michael Cohen. Here's the problem: one of them talked.
Catherine, Cohen also testified that he spoke to Trump multiple times a day, as John just pointed out. How difficult does that then make it for the defense to try to say that Trump didn't know about some of the things that Cohen was doing?
Yeah, it does make it quite difficult for the defense team. I'm curious how they try and poke holes in that, given that Cohen was one of the closest people to Trump since the very beginning, frankly. So the fact that they talked every day, he recalls conversations, specific conversations that he had with Trump about these payments. It does, at the end of the day, make it difficult for the defense. I think the defense team, Trump's lawyers, are really going to try and focus on Cohen's credibility. That's all they have here. They're going to say that he's a liar, and he's been convicted of lying, and therefore he shouldn't be believed. For example, Cohen did say that he, on the stand today, that he lied for Donald Trump. That might help prosecutors in terms of the reasons why he was lying, but that's what Trump's defense really hinges on here, that because he's lying, it's just his word against Trump's. There's nothing really to be believed here. It does make it more difficult that this is somebody who Trump had in his inner circle for years and years and years.
And John, court's in recess now, but what do you make of who's in court today?
I mean, the better question is who's not in court today. Everybody is in court today. Basically, so many of Donald Trump's campaign apparatus is in there. We have 2 United States senators in there today. Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama. J.D. Vance, a potential sweepstakes contender for Donald Trump from Ohio, is in the courtroom. His son Eric Trump is in the courtroom. This is show of force day, right? This is a way to show everybody is here supporting me because I'm the Republican nominee. I should not be here today. I should be out in the campaign trail. Maybe not so much Alabama because he's got that locked up as a Republican, but Ohio will be a good place to go. All of it is meant to create the image of, I don't need to be here. This is a joke to Donald Trump. It's also, though, I think in part, a way to help keep Donald Trump calm, right? The more people there, as people have argued, and you and I have talked about this, Brian, that it's a tactic, right? A little bit of just being able for him to look around, talk to people, get a head nod or something along those lines. I will say, though, with all of those people in the room, everything we've observed, and our team's literally right behind Donald Trump this morning, Diane, he hasn't done that once. Hasn't turned around, hasn't looked at anybody, hasn't really engaged with anybody else in the room. I think this is the day that is just so hard for him to hear any bit of it. And again, I shared that anecdote earlier, but just to go at it again, this was a person that didn't work for Donald Trump and showed loyalty to Donald Trump. It was that reason that he became an employee of Donald Trump's, that Trump created a job for Michael Cohen at the end of the day.
Despite the strong show of support behind him, only Eric Trump from the family has shown up. Are you surprised we haven't seen more family members
I'm not.
in court throughout the course of this case?
I'm not. And
particularly now.
Yeah, I'm not, because you got to remember every member of the Trump family is a little different. And what I mean by that is Ivanka Trump has not been seen this entire cycle, right? Think about it. When Donald Trump announced his first presidential bid, where Michael Cohen actually, fun story, ran the room. There's a story I'll tell you offline. It's really good. But anyway, tease. But the reality is that, that was Michael Cohen's show, but it was a show that debuted with Ivanka Trump.
Sure.
She introduced Donald Trump, the presidential candidate. She has not been to his most recent presidential kickoff. Though she's now a Floridian like Donald Trump, she didn't make the drive up from Miami to Palm Beach. Donald Trump Jr. Is more on the campaign trail for Dad, is more out and about doing other things. As we just reported on ABC News a couple seconds ago, Diane, Donald Trump Jr. actually was at a federal prison this weekend visiting another allies of Donald Trump, the former president, being Peter Navarro. Of course, as you know, he was convicted for not complying with a January 6th committee subpoena. Ultimately has tried to appeal that, so far unsuccessful. He's got one more appeal out there, his team hopes, but it's just not realistic. But I'm not surprised. I think the other question that everybody has asked me throughout all this coverage, are we going to see Melania? No, you're not going to see Melania. I'm sorry. She's not going to come to these proceedings because, again, think about when all these stories came out. We reported it in real time. Catherine, I wish you were up here with me because I'd be looking at you right now because we did this together. Melania Trump left the White House when Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal came out with their stories. She couldn't take it. Hope Hicks testified they kept newspapers out of the residence just to keep it away from Melania and Donald Trump. So if anybody would think she'd be there today or any day for this trial, no, it's not happening.
Catherine, I see you nodding. You want to add to that?
Well, no, John's right. She's not going to show up. It's something that John and I have talked about offline, obviously. When this happened, she was nowhere to be found. I cannot imagine that we will see at least members of his close family. We've seen some, but you certainly will not see Melania Trump there.
Brian, have you heard any red flags in Michael Cohen's testimony so far? Areas where you think, oh, the defense is going to jump all over that?
Not as yet. I think there are definitely parts of his direct examination where the defense will revisit and ask him questions about, but nothing where they're really going to dig into. I think they're going to be somewhat surgical in this and focus on his credibility, the actual story of trying to put together this catch and kill scheme. They're going to try to paint him as the ringleader and Donald Trump kind of just there for the ride, so to speak, because Michael Cohen has already put out that he would lie for Donald Trump. And I think they're going to try to pivot that towards, you lied because you knew it would benefit him. You lied because you knew it would benefit yourself. This isn't a master plan of Donald Trump. It's a master plan of yours. I think that's where we're starting to get in the testimony. I think that's where they'll focus come cross-examination.
John, what are you watching for next?
I'm watching for when Michael Cohen says something that the defense will jump on or loses his cool at any point. I think Michael Cohen is, it's known, it's not me just hypothesizing, Michael Cohen's known as a hothead. I mean, everybody has been screamed at by Michael Cohen if you've covered Donald Trump back in the day. President accounted for at this table. This is a guy that, we even saw in those TikTok videos that we broke first on ABC News, Diane, that, he couldn't help himself, right, talking about the case, even when he had said previously he wasn't going to. And when our story came out, and he then said he wasn't going to again, he then showed up wearing a T-shirt of Donald Trump behind bars, a caricature of Donald Trump. So I think that, listen, it's been a couple hours. It's all been fine, but I think as the questions get hotter, the topics get heavier, as time goes on, when the defense gets up there, Michael Cohen's really going to need to bite his lip and try to keep his cool, because that's what the defense wants to do, right? They want to show the jury that this is a guy that's not stable, that can't keep it together, and that's where Michael Cohen is really going to be tested.
Brian, there was also a part in a previous testimony where I can't remember now if it was Keith Davidson or if it was David Pecker said that they were so worried about Michael Cohen when he talked about his response to Trump leaving to the White House and not hiring Michael Cohen to come with him, that they actually worried Michael Cohen might take his own life. Do you expect that to come back now in terms of an attempt to question his state of mind?
If it does, then I think it would be sustained. I can't imagine that a judge will allow that. I'm just kind of running through the evidentiary rules as to why that would be relevant and why it would not be objectionable. it might be a thing that comes up in the sense the defense wants to ask that question, knowing that it's going to get sustained. But it goes to that theory of you can't unring that bell, and it's up to the jury to decide how they want to navigate through that information, even though a judge will say don't consider it to your ultimate stance. But yeah, to John's point, if you can show that the star witness is unstable, that helps the defense in every way. And I think we're not going to see the aggressive Michael Cohen on direct examination. But remember how we saw with the Stormy Daniels cross-examination, where it started off pretty fiery and continued on as well. I think we're going to see that and then some when it comes to Michael Cohen to try to throw him off his game.
He's a hothead, but he's also an attorney. Does that help? That he's been on the other end of this, or
some of the biggest hotheads I know are attorneys, so I'm not sure.
I'm related to a couple of them.
Yeah,
but, he knows how this works, right? He presumably he knows the tricks. He can anticipate what these lawyers are going to try to do.
And they also say an attorney who represents himself has a client for a fool.
Yeah.
And that arrogance, I think, of knowing you're an attorney, and I will put my hand up first as well as one of those people who's like, yeah, I can probably outsmart most people who try to cross-examine me. But in my attempt to do that, don't get too happy about this, I think my arrogance and my anger may come out. So it's not necessarily if I think I'm winning or the attorney thinks he's winning, it's the perception that the jury has. And you don't want to have two attorneys going back and forth at each other, because at the end of the day, the attorney representing Donald Trump isn't the one who's having their credibility evaluated by the jury. It's Michael Cohen. So it helps, but I've seen it go the wrong way as well.
And Catherine, it looks like they're getting ready to resume this testimony now.
Yeah, it does. It looks like they're coming back in. They're returning to the courtroom after the break. Cohen is seated on the witness stand. Our team, at least inside, says that Trump was conferring with his lead attorney, Todd Blanche, when Cohen re-entered the courtroom. So, of course, we will see what happens next, but he's on the witness stand, so I think we'll have some news out of this pretty soon, Diane.
All right, we'll be watching. John Santucci, Catherine Faulders, Brian Buckmeyer, thank you all. And we will be covering this trial all day long. We'll bring you the latest on the former president's hush money trial right here on ABC News Live.